Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Value an Hour podcast, Love Procurement. My name is Stephen Carter, and I'm going to be the host today. And we're going to be talking about a number of things, in fact, quite a few different topics. But at the heart of the conversation will be around supplier relationships. And when I was in the procurement team at Crown Commercial Services, one of the things that I really enjoyed was talking and working with suppliers and learning from them and hearing what they had to talk about and what they had to offer. But also I had a privilege of being the small business SME owner within Crown Commercial Service for a short while, looking at policy around supplier adoption, etc. So I'm really delighted to be joined by Somia Karim, someone that I've seen and met a few times at different London procurement events, someone with some great in-depth knowledge around procurement and, again, supplier relationships, someone that's worked at Unilever or worked with Unilever and other organisations, and also done a lot of stuff in the volunteering space. So, Sonia, before we sort of dive into the meat of the conversation, first of all, why do you love procurement? And then a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Stephen. Well, thank you for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to meet you again. Yes, so we did meet at many of the CPO events in London, which were very exciting. And as to your question, why I love procurement is also because the procurement space is evolving. It's moving rapidly from what was purchasing and very basic buying for companies, whether it's small, medium, and larger organizations. They're all incorporating a lot more and investing a lot more in procurement. And I think procurement just has a lot to offer anybody joining it. And they are very talented people. And as you know from the events we met at, you meet very interesting people. Now, to get to the main point is that procurement has a major function in a company as far as relationships go, both internally and externally. And with suppliers in particular, where the organization's pretty much dependent on that relationship with the external stakeholders, supporting the organization's profitability and future and success, essentially. So I love procurement for many reasons. There's the people you meet, the amount of knowledge really you just come across, legal, contracts, finance to product and services knowledge. Procurement covers so many areas. And then, I'm going to stop there so that give you a chance to answer the next question.
So one of the things that, again, going through your LinkedIn profile and stuff, and things we've talked about in the past, you mentioned something around the South Ken partnership and what you've been doing there in terms of volunteering. That sounds really fascinating around ESG and stuff. I mean, what was that role, and how is that role, and how does that sort of fit in with that sort of procurement experience, or that love procurement experience, should we say?
Well, yeah, good question. I mean, the involvement with South Kensington is actually just it is a meeting with institutions who have invested a lot in their sustainability departments, and they're looking to see how they can improve their buying practices. And when you said volunteering, it's actually a real contribution to the community in this part of London. And with some of the major internationally known institutions, Imperial, V&A, Royal Albert Hall, how they are measuring their impact on the local environment, which I think is fantastic. And it's really a privilege to be involved. And you are working in a space where you're meeting with different people, and sustainability, this is where sustainability meets procurement, essentially. A lot of learnings to do on both sides. And on that front, have also, we've developed a procurement charter, the first one, together.
Brilliant. Sounds really good. So that sort of local, if you like, that building that procurement charter. obviously, a key part of any sort of procurement charter is also, the relationship with the suppliers and how they bring in, or how they bring value, and how they also help that. And obviously, from a sustainability perspective, they're key to ESG targets and things. What's your sort of take on how you start that journey with a supplier in terms of building a relationship with them?
Essentially, I mean, as a company has a need,
Yeah.
and that need, if it's a new startup, if it's a large organization, if it's a new need for product development, even in a large organization, do you need to start to find the supplier who can offer the product or the service? As you know, my background, as you said, is in very large pharma companies, FMCG, and work pretty much globally. So also looking at suppliers in different hemispheres and different regions. Firstly, you're looking at a supplier who can offer value, offer the product, offer value, and looking at some of do they, essentially when you're coming to relationships, is communication. Can you reach out to them if they're based in Asia, if they're based locally? What are the advantages, really? So these are some of the basics you may look at, cover. And essentially what I would do is look at the long-term relationships you'd want to forge with these suppliers, and how to develop them to not just bring savings, but to see the supply is very much ahead in terms of, when I mention values, innovation of the product, that they'll keep you up to date. As I've said, the communication, the delivery, if it's coming, sometimes we have a very distant relationship with suppliers, but they may not be key. But
Right.
there are many areas and points to explore, really.
So you sort of brought out some really interesting points there around that sort of, again, it's all about the relationship and the balance between value and savings and innovation. When you're sort of within that supplier relationship, how do you start to identify, those opportunities, if you like, and those partners? I mean, I can remember, working with a lot of suppliers in Crown Commercial, and there's certain trigger points you sort of feel, yes, start to become relaxed with those companies ultimately, but it's all about that relationship. What's your sort of, do you get a gut feel when you're sort of starting these conversations with are there a company you can work with, or is it very sort of systematic, your approach?
Good question, actually, because when you say gut feel, obviously if something's familiar to you, you tend to go towards that. So if it's a well-known company, large organization, that is able, you feel they will be able to support. But gut feel, I mean, that kind of decision making needs to be, you need to really evaluate everything. And sometimes the large organizations aren't the best. They won't serve you because they have big organizations as priorities, or they have so many customers, and small organizations work better. So gut feel, and I'd say you just essentially would go down to basics and do your evaluation. What is your need internally? What is the need of your internal stakeholders, and how best to meet them? And look at what value a supplier can bring to a company. And I mean value on many levels, as I said before, not just cost savings. Whether it's timely delivery, whether it's product integrity, and the whole reliability, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as to how when we look at the suppliers, and there tends to be a sort of a habit from outside procurement to sort of think of the supplier as just being a commodity almost. But what you're describing is far more. I mean, a supplier is actually what you sell in most cases. Unless you're from the ground to the customer, there's always going to be a supply chain. So that sort of that criticality of the supplier that you just sort of highlighted really, it comes out of that. Now, how would you, from a how would you sort of describe a good supplier in that journey, in that relationship?
A good supply would be one where you can be able to build a relationship, and
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about which is people to people, person to person. At the end
Yes.
of the day, it could be BASF, Dow Chemical, or a very small company. So you developed organization that once you've established the product you need, of course, you've just jumped over that, and then the
Yeah.
service, etc., provision, that they are responsive, their offering is good, and they'll be able to support you, not just short term, long term. And I say this is really, really important, because you could just jump in there, buy think one supplier can offer this, but suppliers also then, what if 6 months down the line for your new product, or you have to suddenly change suppliers because they're no longer able to offer this. This is quite a cost to the organization when you're
Yes.
in procurement, cost in terms of delays, and then also evaluating another supplier if it's QA involved, etc. It's a long process to approve the product. So good supply, a supplier that wants to build a relationship with you. It's a two-way street, really. You'd want a relationship where there can be trust. So should there be any mishaps, which I mean, life is full of mishaps, whether it's in the product, service, or logistics, economic changes, and volatility. So someone who will be reliable enough and supportive enough to help you through the process of getting that service provision that you're paying them for, and trusting them with at the end of the day.
And that's really, again, you've brought us some really, really interesting area, which is, and people often forget about, which is that long-term relationship piece. It's not, people often think, I've got a supplier and I'm just buying some stuff, but actually it is 5, 6, 7. It's the life cycle of your product that you need that supplier relationship going for, ultimately. And I think that's something that people outside procurement tend to forget, that you'll think about the strategic as well as the tactical, ultimately. I think that's
Well,
really, yeah.
Since you say that, just jumping in there about people
Yeah.
outside procurement, well, if you think of every one of us are consumers. And
Yeah.
so whether the other internal stakeholders or people in general, they do buy products. If it's a laptop, if it's a mobile phone or mobile phone service, we're all consumers. What do we look for? We look for the reliability. We look for value. Some of us do just, think short term, but then we know the benefits of long term. It's everywhere, whether even if it's gym membership service to anything. We look for value in the products we buy, the reliability. Will they last? Should they not? Is there guarantees? Are they responsive? Is there like Apple support, etc.?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's the way to really look at the supplier relationship area in procurement.
Yeah. And so one of the things, again, that sort of tactical over strategic. One of the things, again, you sort of mentioned in the past, and I sort of just sort of switch to a little bit, is when you come into an organization and you're looking at, okay, how do we get the best out of those supplier relationships we currently have, and where do we focus in? And you had some great insights on how you, as a methodology, how you think about that supplier base. And it would be, from a outside in perspective, for those people that don't really love procurement, like we do, it'd be good to sort of, get your sort of how would you go about that sort of process of, okay, I've got some suppliers, I've got a customer supplier base. How do I then focus in on those value ones that I can really relationship building? How can I turn them into partnerships ultimately from suppliers?
Look at you look at the suppliers you already have, and
Yeah.
how can you who do you need to reach out to, which departments within that supply to build a relationship? Should your need increase? Should you want to discuss new products? And you're going to talk at all levels. I mean, when you're saying moving forward, how would we you look at your key suppliers, who you're reliant on, and you don't, again, you wouldn't want someone, anything to, one supplier lets you down, it may affect the whole manufacturing process.
Yes.
It could even be in services, waste collection, if you're a big pharma company and need that particular services. It's on many levels. How would you, contracts are there. Here you get to some of the bog standard stuff of procurement. And when you say, well, not everybody loves procurement, well, let's have, once the pieces are there, the basics, I'd say, are there, although it does have complexity in some of the contracts. But it's an agreement, so should there be any lapses, and protects everybody. Again, to the layman, I said, people who are not in procurement, you're looking at these are like having a guarantee for something you're buying, and ensuring reliability. But when here we're talking about relationships and how, if you're going to choose a supplier and you know they're developing new products all the time, whether it's new emollients or new even electronic parts, you want them to reach out to you and say, look, here's the latest, here's what's possible in the future. That will keep your company ahead. You may not change overnight, but a supplier that is very proactive in that space. And we spoke about innovation as being also part of value provision. That's amazing. I mean, we're talking, this is why I go back to talking, is dialogue.
Dialogue and collaboration, I suppose, ultimately, because you have to have that contact, that channels between each of you in the supply chain to make sure that you're talking. And there's always going to be problems in a relationship. There's always going to be a challenge. You mentioned earlier, disruption in the supply chain. Once you have that trust, is that something then, that trust then comes through to honesty and transparency? Is that something that also happens when that you do that?
Yeah, I think just being being clear upfront. I mean, trust is like when if the ensuring the product's available for when you need it. That would I'd expect from suppliers. For if you give, but then also on the procurement side, you're giving them insight into your requirements in the coming year or 6 months, as they need. They may need to know that because it's a product they manufacture or develop specifically for you, which happens often. So this is where suppliers also, you want to supply here on this part for procurement. You as a if you're buying for your company, you want supply to feel secure,
right?
And they will do their best for you. That's why go back to it's a two-way street. We're looking to nurture the best relationships. It's way more than cost savings. You're looking at cost for the company, the value, the profitability at the end. How successful it would be. Think of all the big companies, Apple for their small components, and the Intel and Tesla, and is also another large company. Who are they reliant on? And there's a dependency there, but suppliers have to step up. But they also then need to give the suppliers the support that they need for their production.
Yeah, and I suppose looking back at the big companies and looking back generally at sort of innovation, quite often we think of the larger company driving innovation into the supply chain, but quite often I see it as being a different way around. I see the supplier seeing areas that they can improve their customers' products, and it could be that they could make the item slightly cheaper, or it could be they could save some money, or it could be a powerful innovation that really changes the game for their customer ultimately. And that, I suppose, again, there's something else we sort of forget about when we just talk about relationships, is that you brought it up again, which is that two-way street. And a two-way street means that you're both committed to deliver ultimately growth for both companies. If that's the game, ultimately that's where you want to get to. I mean, so within that sort of that dynamic, if you like, of the relationship between you, your suppliers, What about how do you manage expectations around the other people in the game, which are the stakeholders? Your internal customers. Your procurement are doing something for the business. That you've got some stakeholders. How do you sort of manage that relationship a little bit on from the supplier to them, should we say?
Yeah, another good question. So internally is extremely important. Those are your the other departments in the company. So there will be stakeholders who have that defined need from the department. There'll be supportive the support as well. So you may need QA, QC, etc. All of them to pass. You'll need their support in approvals. Then legal and finance come in as well. Finance, what are the terms? Legal, we can, again, it's very supportive to procurement, but also procurement then need to work with them in not jumping the gun because one department has that need and they need it tomorrow, so we'll have no contracts in place. But some you get, or if you do need to, this again, constant dialogue or required dialogue with finance. We need to do this advance payment. This is needed tomorrow. So it is procurement is, again, going back to why is love procurement. They're active, extremely active in organization. They lead at the core of an organization and reaching out to so many departments and vice versa. So there we have a very, very central part of company. And then reaching out to departments, say, NPD, new product development, procurement can say, there's a new innovative product on the market, new kind of chip or new emollient. You put it forward, and again, this is very good question for internal stakeholders as well. How to not just manage them, but then not manage them, but collaborate with them, and then also in times of crisis, where there's a lot of pressure and dialogue or conversations can be strained. But it is, I think, for procurement to assure the end users in the organization to say they are doing their level best, and how they will even explain to a part how they will bring in what they're doing, really, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that's really, again, that sort of brings that value of the procurement team as the core, if you like. And I suppose one of the things while you were talking, I was thinking that obviously from a innovation perspective, procurement are the people that will be closer to the supplier to find out what's going on, what is new, because the manufacturing team or the other people involved in it are hands-on day to day. They can't really see the more strategic picture. So that's really, really interesting from that perspective, which you brought out. One of the things then that I'd just like to touch on then around that sort of stakeholder view, and that this is now more current, and we hear a lot about this AI word in the world. I often hear when I go to conferences, you probably have the same thing, AI is going to replace procurement because, it can do everything. I mean, obviously what you've described is impossible with AI. Where do you think AI could help you in that relationship, that collaboration piece?
I think we are getting to, just understand AI really. Like, well, how is this? How can it help? I think it can be very. It can be time saving. It can be. Right. It can also help in relationship building. Say there's frustration, and you put it on a platform that what you need, and it actually, and you give it the right kind of information, and this is who I need to send it to. I need it ASAP, and there's you can, instead of passing your frustration on to someone else.
Yes,
you are actually just checking in, as it were, with yourself and with AI. Yeah. So I'd say supportive on many levels, information, as well as understanding some of maybe logistics. If you're part of procurement, that does not needs to figure out timelines. and
Yes.
want to cut the time of reaching out to your freight forwarders. Again, that's another relationship that I haven't mentioned as yet. But here we get information at the touch of a button. But I don't think it's something to be afraid of. I think something to be absolutely developed, to see, well, now we've got this information at our fingertips. Even ask how to ask for that information. That's just fascinating. So you'll need to be knowledgeable to know what to ask and how to ask, and then it will redefine some of the practices and actions, and will help the whole process, I think, streamline it a lot. But
Yeah.
we're only understanding it now, so I'm not sure really how the future will be.
Absolutely. So a lot of the use cases we see are around that. So that relationship, the collaboration, the talking, the taking some of the mundane tasks, but also acting as, I need to communicate with suppliers, and it helps frame and make it take some of the pressure off some of that communication. So it's really powerful. And so, I think we probably have to wrap up in a minute, which is a real shame, because I like to carry on this conversation for another couple of hours, really. But when you sort of, we talked about love procurement at the beginning. We discussed, a lot about the supplier relationships. How do you sort of, what would you like your takeaway to the listeners be? Should procurement become more fun? Should it be, how should it? What's your takeaway that you'd like to sort of leave the listeners with?
Yeah, I think procurement is fun if you understand it, or can be leveled up to be fun, certainly, whichever industry you're in. And as I said, it's pervasive, it's everywhere. It just, we need to talk about it more, and we need to share. We've had this at the events. There've been fantastic talks. We need to share our ideas and see where we can move forward, and again, with suppliers, with our colleagues, etc. It is fun, it's fascinating, it can lead you to anywhere, because you do need, as I said, the 20 plus years I've been procurement, this is an understanding of finance. That's why I started out at EY, legal as well. You touch on so many, not even touch, but need to know about so many different areas. And I've been fortunate in that I've been worked with pharma companies and FMCGs, and I think my knowledge of biochemistry, having studied that, has helped. So you're getting statistical analysis, you're getting very detailed information. So widgets or anything else, sky's the limit for procurement. There's I can speak about my experience, and I'm just eager to know about so many other industries, technology in particular, the way the world is heading. It's super.
It's very exciting times, absolutely, and I think and I think you just summed up really why people should be in procurement, and why procurement should get more airtime in the world, really. So so I'd like to say thank you very much, Sonia, for your time. It's been a pleasure having a chat and discussing, and hopefully the listeners can get how much you love procurement, which I think has come across powerfully. And I think so thank you very much, and and hopefully we can chat again soon in an event coming to near you, I suppose. So, brilliant.
Thank you.